Would the secretary please take roll?
Yes. Commissioner Foster.
Here.
Commissioner Phillips.
Here.
Commissioner Terosis.
Here.
Vice Chair DeGron.
Here.
And Chair Sultan.
Here. Okay, great. Moving on to approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the board's last meeting?
I so move.
Second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Duran, I believe, seconded by Commissioner Terosis. Would the secretary please take a roll call vote?
Yes. Commissioner Phillips.
Abstain, as I was not present at the last meeting.
Commissioner Terosis.
Yes.
Commissioner Foster.
Yes.
Vice Chair DeGron.
Yes.
And Chair Sultan.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Now on to special agenda items. Executive Director Condon, do we have any announcements, commendations, awards, or introductions of special guests?
Yes, I have a couple of announcements, but before I do that, Chair Sultan, would you make the announcement about how somebody could participate if they didn't let us know in advance? Thank you.
I shall. Thank you so much. So historically, anybody wishing to address the board on a specific item or to make a public comment should have contacted our board secretary prior to the meeting. However, anyone who hasn't registered to speak prior to the meeting can still let us know in the chat function of Blue Jeans here that you would like to make a public comment, and we will make that happen.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So yes, I have a couple of announcements. As we all know, the city and state eviction moratoria for non-payment of rent due to impacts from COVID-19, those moratoria ended as of September 30th. So tenants in Santa Monica have up to a year to pay their back rent, but tenants may also qualify for the money that is federal funds that are available through the state's COVID-19 rental relief program. There's more than $7 billion in funds available to help landlords and tenants who were not able, either didn't receive the full rent or were not able to pay it. As of this afternoon, the Housing is Key dashboard shows that 2,300 applications have been received from Santa Monica, and that's 800 in just the last month. More than 1,000 households have been served through the program, and they've received average assistance of about $16,000, and more than almost $17 million has come to Santa Monica households to help prevent eviction. And there's still lots of money available, so we really encourage people to pursue rent relief through this program. You can do that by contacting housingiskey.com or calling 833-430-2122. And additionally, here in the city of Santa Monica, both city staff and volunteers from community organizations are available to help people complete those applications. So if somebody is in need of assistance, they can call 311 from within Santa Monica and request an appointment, and somebody will get back to them and schedule an appointment with them. And assistance is also available in multiple languages. And then somebody want to say something?
No, please continue.
Okay. And then I also want to make an announcement that the city has launched a new initiative called 100 Homes with the objective of helping 100 people who are experiencing homelessness in Santa Monica move into permanent housing. There's a significant amount of federal funding available, emergency housing vouchers, to make this happen for eligible individuals. And they're looking for, here in Santa Monica, they're looking for property owners who have units that they would be willing to rent to these people with these federal vouchers. They're also looking for volunteers to assist with landlord outreach, donating household goods and furniture, and helping to actually coordinate move-in day activities. So if you're interested in volunteering, or if you have a unit that you're interested in renting through this program, you should contact the Human Services Department here in the city at their email address, humanservices@santamonica.gov, and someone will get back to you if you leave an email. So those are the announcements I had this evening.
Tracy, do you know if somebody is homeless and is interested in an emergency housing voucher, where they should go in Santa Monica?
I would tell them to contact the Human Services Division because they can talk to them more about this program.
Okay, great. And then I just wanted to add, oh, yes.
Or if they are connected with a social service agency, they can also probably work through the local social service agency.
That makes a lot of sense. And in terms of the eviction laws that you mentioned earlier, I just wanted to expand on what you said and note that even if people, so even though part of the eviction moratorium expired and some of the rules in that law no longer apply, there's still a lot of really good protections for people in place that can't pay their rent due to COVID-related financial impacts. So if somebody is finding out this month that maybe they can't get a job, or they still can't get a job, or they can't pay their rent for whatever reason in October, or up until, through March of next year, they can still apply for that rental assistance, and their application for that rental assistance will slow or stop the eviction process. So just something very important for people to keep in mind, that there are still some really robust protections in place in California. Okay. Now it's time, I believe, for public comment. Do we have anybody who has requested previously to make a public comment or requested through our chat function, Secretary Ho?
No, there's no request to speak.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully when we back in person again, we'll get more of our additional public comment. Okay, I believe that the next item on our agenda is our jurisdictional items. I attempt to find the correct document here. Excellent. Okay, so the first item we have on our agenda under jurisdictional items is 10A. It's an appeal, D5268, regarding the property at 225 Montana Avenue. May we have a staff report on this item?
Good evening, Commissioners. Julianne Paolea moved into Unit 306 at 225 Montana Avenue in 2013. In June of this year, she filed a petition for a rent decrease. She received a rent decrease for some of the claimed deficiencies, and she's appealing a denial of a rent decrease for 3 conditions. The board reviews this matter as an appellate body. It should reverse the hearing officer's findings only if there is evidence of clear error. If the hearing officer's findings are reasonable given the evidence, even if the board would have decided differently had it been the finder of fact, the board should affirm the findings. The first condition are the carpets in her unit that she claims were soiled and damaged to such an extent by her landlord's workers that they needed to be replaced. Her landlord believed they only needed to be steam cleaned. Instead, she paid out of her own pocket to change out the carpets. While there is a dispute in the evidence as to whether the carpets were damaged and needed to be replaced, there is no dispute that this is no longer the case. The board can only grant a rent decrease for current maintenance conditions because there is no dispute that the carpets are now in good condition. There's no basis for a rent decrease for the carpets. The second conditions are items stored in the garage. In her petition, Ms. Paolea claimed that there are items in the garage that constitute a fire hazard. At the hearing, she submitted the photos that are included in the staff report. She didn't offer any evidence that the items stored in front of the other tenants' parking spaces constituted a fire hazard, nor is there any citation on this point from the fire department. She did testify that the items stored in front of her vehicle make it difficult to park because the photos of her parking space shows 2 doors in her space support her claim. The hearing officer granted a decrease for this item that the landlord had left behind. But there is no basis in the evidence to grant a decrease for items stored in front of other people's parking spaces. Finally, Ms. Paolea asked for a rent decrease for the condition of her countertop. The photo in the staff report of the countertop on the right, shows it to be slightly lifted. The landlord testified that the countertop was solid and in good condition. Ms. Paolea submitted a health department inspection report from June 1st, 2021, which lists as a violation a linoleum panel of the kitchen countertop that the inspector characterized as blistering in one area. The inspection report didn't contain any photo of the panel to identify it or to clarify what's meant by blistering. The report also stated that a reinspection was to take place on June 25, 2021, for the inspector to assess whether to impose fees for failure to abate the deficiencies. At the July 20th, 2021 hearing on this matter, Ms. Paolea did not submit any evidence of any reinspection that had took place and whether the health department imposed penalties for failure to correct the problem. In her appeal, Ms. Paolea claims that a contractor estimated that it would cost $3,000 to repair the countertop, but there is no evidence of the contractor's statement in the record. The charter authorizes the board to grant a rent decrease for substantial deterioration of a control unit or a failure to substantially comply with applicable health and safety codes. The hearing officer found that the evidence doesn't show a substantial deterioration of the countertop. Ms. Paolea argues that the health department report by itself should be sufficient evidence to warrant a rent decrease, but there is no provision in the charter or the regulation that states that if a report from another agency is offered into evidence, submitted as it was here without authentication from the issuing agency, a rent decrease is automatically warranted. Instead, this argument goes to the weight of the evidence, which is the province of the hearing officer as a trier of fact. On this issue, there was conflicting evidence, and the hearing officer noted that the photo submitted by the tenant, the one that's in the staff report, shows only a minor defect, which seemed to lend additional context to the report's findings. Thus, the hearing officer weighed all the evidence submitted, including the health department report, in the absence of evidence from a reinspection, and reasonably concluded the evidence was not sufficient to prove that the countertop's condition was a substantial deficiency that warranted a rent decrease. Given the paucity of the evidence on this issue, the hearing officer recommended that the board weigh the requirement that Ms. Paolea wait 6 months before she can file a new petition on this condition, give her an opportunity to gather more complete evidence of a substantial deterioration of the countertop if she's able to do so. And the record supports this recommendation. For these reasons, staff recommends the board affirm the hearing officer's decision and her findings of fact and conclusions of law, including the recommendation to waive the 6-month waiting period before filing a new claim on the countertop.
Yes, Commissioner Foster.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask staff a question. Between her correspondence with us, the appellant, and some of the staff report, it mentioned the civil code. And we often get this question as commissioners, I'm sure you do at the board office as well. If there's something wrong and the landlord's not fixing it, can't I just fix it and give them a receipt and they have to pay me back for it? You know, that's an area fraught with legalities and caution. Civil code does provide for a repair and rebate situation, but that has to be pursued. Isn't it true that that has to be pursued outside of the purview of the rent control charter and this agency?
Correct. One can usually follow that through small claims court. The requirements, of course, before you're eligible for that, and you have to follow what the steps that the civil code lays out.
Yeah, so while I empathize with what this woman went through, I definitely do empathize with what she says happened. But it's clear to me from the staff report that our hands are tied by the letter of the law, and that hopefully she can pursue something through the civil code. I'm prepared to move on with this item.
Okay, I think we actually have a speaker on this item. So let's go ahead and hear from Mr. Ophir Stern, who is the owner representative, I believe, at this property. Is Mr. Stern available?
Yes. Mr. Stern, you will have 3 minutes to address the board. After that time, you will be muted unless you're granted more time by the board. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, I inspected the countertops myself, and they're they're fine. The conditions of the countertops are fine. We actually replaced her kitchen sink. She used to have a porcelain cast iron sink, and we swapped it out with a brand new stainless steel sink. And if there was an issue with the countertop at the time when we replaced her kitchen sink, we would have done so at that time. I mean, we gave her a brand new stainless sink, a new faucet, and we repainted an entire apartment, and we spent over $4,000 in other repairs by repainting her apartment, reglazing her sink, replacing her light fixtures. She didn't want the doors in her apartment, so we went ahead. She asked us to take off the doors, so we put the doors in her parking spot, and then she complained about it, and then we then went ahead and removed those doors that she asked us to remove. So the doors are no longer in her parking spot. So I don't know if the credit that was granted for the doors that were in her parking spot could be, I don't know what needs to be done at that point since they're no longer in her parking spot. But to my judgment, everything in her apartment is in a habitable condition and in a lot better condition since when I was on the hearing back in July, and I noted receipts of all the improvements we've done to her apartment, showing what we've done that didn't deem for any other items to be done in her apartment, the countertop and so forth. So in regards to her credit that was granted, what do we do from this point going forward on stopping that credit going forward for those doors? I don't know if there was any other items that were deemed as credit, but I think there was just the doors. If you can correct me if I'm wrong or right, if there was any additional credit given. But from what I understand, everything else is in good working order.
Thank you. Perhaps
would you like me to respond?
Yeah, that would be great if you could speak to his question. Thank you.
Mr. Stern, if you are complete with the repairs and you believe you've complied, there were 2 deficiencies that were given a decrease. One was for a window screen, the other is for the doors in the parking space. You should contact the hearing department and let them know that you would like to request an addendum to verify that you've complied with the decision, and they can provide you with the steps necessary.
Does that make sense, Mr. Stern?
Correct. Yeah. So I'll have to contact the hearing department to file an addendum. Yes, I understand. Is there now the appeal that we having now, the discussion? When do we have I guess, is there an email that gets sent out on your guys' decision?
Point of just personal privilege, might this be a conversation that we could direct staff to communicate with the party offline? I'm happy to do it on the dais, but it seems like that may be more productive for the impacted parties.
Yeah, and typically the issues are, the decisions are rendered during the meeting. So if you're in the meeting, you'll hear what our decision is. Okay, did you have anything else that you wanted to tell us, Mr. Stern? I don't know how you had 3 minutes. I'm not sure how deep into your 3 minutes.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Any additional questions for Mr. Stern? Okay. Thank you so much for your input.
I have a motion, unless
okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Phillips.
We'll move to adopt the hearing officer's finding of facts and conclusions of law including the express waiver of the 6-month period to refile based on any additional evidence related to countertop, although it does sound like that was cured. Yeah, that's motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, second from Chair Duran. Motion was by Commissioner Phyllis. Can we take a vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner DeRosas,
Yes.
Commissioner Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Phyllis,
Yes.
Vice Chair Duran,
Yes.
and Chair Sultan.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to our next item, which is an exemption, 1822, regarding 2929 Pennsylvania Avenue. May we have a staff report on this item?
Commissioners, back in 2013, this board granted a removal permit for redevelopment of the Village Trailer Park and removal of 99 controlled mobile home pads. 10 pads were left behind in what was called the residual parcel, and they still remain on the property. Under the removal permit agreement, the new development had to register 109 of the new apartments as rent control units, with the remaining new units to be exempted as new construction. Millennium LLC has complied with the agreement by registering the 109 rent controlled units, and those units are listed in Exhibit A of the staff report. Here, Millennium is asking the board to exempt the remaining new units as new construction as per the removal agreement, and those units are listed in Exhibit B. Because the units in question are new construction and not subject to the rent control law under the removal permit agreement, staff recommends the board grant the application and adopt the proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law.
Thank you, Hakan. Any questions for staff?
No questions for me.
No questions. All right. Anybody like to make a comment on this item or motion?
Are there any speakers?
No, there are no speakers on this item.
Are you entertaining a motion, Chair Sultan?
I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll move to adopt the recommendation set forth in the report. Saying it right. Yep. So I'll move to grant the exemption and adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law as set forth in the staff report.
Second.
All right. Could we take a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Phyllis,
Yes.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Phyllis?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner DeRosas,
Yes.
Vice Chair Duran,
Yes.
and Chair Sultan.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, we have one more exemption application, which is item 10C, 1820, regarding 2526 5th Street.
Before a staff report, can I say something?
Of course.
This one just seems really, really straightforward, and though we hate to lose any units, it was clear that there were no tenants impacted here, and it seems to be a completely straightforward grant. So I would move that we grant this owner occupancy exemption.
I'll second that.
Okay, let's take a vote.
Okay. Commissioner Phyllis,
Yes.
Commissioner DeRosas,
Yes.
Commissioner Foster,
Yes.
Vice Chair Duran,
Yes.
and Chair Sultan.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, great. That looks to me to be pretty much the end of our agenda. Our next Rent board meeting is November 11th, 2021 at 7 p.m. TBD as to whether it's going to be via Blue Jeans again or in person. Shall we take a vote to adjourn?
I will move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Can't get the adjournment right.
Yeah, you got it. You got it. We're voting on it. That's perfect.
Sorry.
Hang out and talk to the public.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.